We have all been there. You're staring at your code editor, typing out raw CSS box shadow properties, saving, refreshing the browser, and guessing values until the shadow looks acceptable. What you actually want is a beautifully modern, perfectly diffused, soft floating UI card layered perfectly over a custom CSS gradient background. To build this exact component without typing a single line of raw syntax, we are going to use the Prime Tool Hub CSS box shadow and background gradient generator. This is a completely offline tool that lets you design UI depth visually. To follow along with this process, go ahead and open a blank code editor or a sandbox environment like CodePen. Replacing manual syntax entry with a visual generator achieves exact cross-browser UI designs instantly. You eliminate the endless trial and error cycle and get immediate feedback on your design choices. Looking at the Prime Tool Hub interface, your primary focus is the real-time live preview area in the center of the screen. You can test your shadow designs on your own assets by clicking the Upload Image button and dropping a custom transparent PNG directly into the preview box. First, we need to establish our underlying depth. Navigate to the Custom Gradient section and select Linear Gradient from the drop-down menu. Next, click the color swatches to blend your background. Pick a distinct start color, like a bright ocean blue, and a contrasting end color to create a rich visual base. Use the angle slider below the colors to set the blend to 135 degrees. This alters the direction of the color blend so it flows diagonally across the screen. Manipulating the direction of light flow and color via dynamic background gradients instantly prevents your web page from feeling flat and stagnant. With the background set, switch over to the box shadow sliders. We start by positioning the shadow using the horizontal and vertical offset inputs. Simulating a top-left light source is standard for UI lighting. Setting X and Y offsets to 10 pixels pushes the shadow down and right. Then, pushing the blur radius to 25 pixels smoothly diffuses those harsh lines outward. Notice the stark visual difference here. A 0-pixel blur creates a harsh, solid block, typical of brutalist or retro 8-bit web design, whereas our 25-pixel blur creates a soft, modern elevation. Increasing the blur radius is the primary mechanical step for separating an element from its background. It forces the human brain to perceive physical height and separation on a flat screen. At this stage, we encounter the most common amateur failure point in UI design, leaving the shadow far too dark and opaque. Grab the opacity slider and drop it drastically. Bring it all the way down below 10%, setting it to 0.10. This animation demonstrates the spread radius, which differs conceptually from the blur. The spread physically shrinks or expands the overall size of the shadow before any diffusion is applied. Senior front-end developers use a specific trick here. Set the spread radius to a slightly negative value, like -2 pixels. This tucks the edges in, making the shadow physically smaller than the parent element. Mathematically combining a high blur, ultra-low opacity, and a negative spread is the definitive formula for creating that highly sought-after premium floating illusion. Now look down at the generated CSS code box at the bottom of the interface. Click the Copy button to capture the offline generated syntax directly to your clipboard. This visual breaks down the output block. You can see the standard CSS3 box shadow property branches out into specific WebKit and Moz vendor prefixes. Vendor prefixes are specific code extensions that ensure newer CSS features are understood by different rendering engines. This automated vendor prefixing guarantees that your precise shadow design will render flawlessly across all iOS, Android, and desktop browsers without any extra coding on your part. Let's test this code. Cut back over to the live CodePen editor we set up earlier and focus on your target.card CSS class. Execute the paste command to drop your generated block directly into the style sheet. Look at the preview window. It updates instantly to display the perfectly floating UI element we just designed, proving the exact translation from Visual Tool to raw code. For your next step, navigate back to Prime Tool HUD and toggle the Inset Shadow switch. An inset shadow applies the depth effect inside the element, which allows you to explore sunken, neomorphic design trends. Utilizing an offline visual CSS generation tool eliminates syntax errors and speeds up your front-end workflow. It allows you to dial in your exact lighting values, elevating the final polish of your web project.